Hi, Assalamu alaikum. Sulaiman Rahim here, Messenger of the Covenant, breaker of the seven seals. Brothers and sisters, war talk, abomination of desolation. As I've been saying, that's going to be the main topic. That is going to be the topic from now until the abomination of desolation, which will occur shortly, is imminent. The war in the Middle East is about to hit the boiling point. That's what we're talking about. So, I'm going to, this is somewhat of a Redux, because I noticed there was a sound issue, previous one, so I'm going to go through this fairly quickly. So it should be in 5 parts. So let's proceed. Part 1, Abomination of Desolation. Abomination of Desolation, brothers and sisters, what is that? First, we're going to build up to it. You need to know some history so you understand what this is all about. So we're going to go back briefly to cover some history. We're suffering energy deprivation, which means the universe expands and contracts without end. Expands and contracts without end. There's no end to it. No beginning. So, as it expands, all the energy that once was the atmosphere of the earth, so to speak, is out there now. So, as full expansion, there's very little energy left. So we suffer energy deprivation. We don't have enough energy to maintain ourselves. That's what's happening. So we entered that phase approximately 50,000 years ago, started that phase. Presently, the universe is contracting now. So we're in a phase of energy returning. It returns in waves approximately every 5,000, it returns in waves approximately every 50 years, called jubilees. So, anyway, during this period, 50,000 years ago, the process of energy deprivation began. It started that cycle. We was thrown off our land. Arabia was forced off of it. 35,000 years ago, we were separated from our mind, so to speak, because it was religion. Separate the creator from the creation. This, religion came about 35,000 years ago, because the true religion only mathematics. So first we lost our land, then we pretty much lost our mind. See, we separated. Religion is not mathematics. And then 6,000 years ago, right, we lost our civilization, so to speak, because that was the event of Dr. Yaqub. So that started a 6,000 year period, right, which would be the worst part of the 50,000 year energy deprivation cycle. So I'm going to this very quickly. At any rate, we want to pick up from the point of 6,000 years ago, Dr. Yaqub, because we're presently in that cycle right now. We're still in the religious, right? We're still in that religious phase and still off our land. But now we're in the reign of Dr. Yaqub's. So what the idea behind Dr. Yaqub is that since we were suffering energy deprivation and we could not maintain a civilization, maintain a viable civilization, then he took and grafted a stripped down version of us. So if you think of us as a Lamborghini, then what he did is stripped it down, all the accessories and everything, until he came with a Volkswagen Beetle, which doesn't require much maintenance, doesn't require much energy. So they'd have more than enough energy, they have disposable energy, so to speak, right? Disposable income, that income that you have after you take and pay all your expenses and your bills and everything, you have the extra money to spare. Well, they have that, and we don't. So that was giving them power to rule. But they had extra energy. But like, when you have disposable income, you can use it wisely or use it foolishly. You can waste it, or you can invest it, right? So that was the situation. They did not have suffer-energy deprivation. They had the excess energy, right? That's called external energy. So you have two states of energy, internal and external, okay? So we didn't have enough energy to maintain ourselves internally anymore, right? And so therefore, you definitely have energy to maintain stuff externally, right? Because you don't have enough to maintain internally, and you don't have enough to maintain stuff externally, of course. So they did. See, they had enough energy to maintain stuff externally. Hold on here, just for a second. So, how was they going to use that energy? Okay. Like I said, you can use it wisely or foolishly. So that was the purpose of Musa going, right? To teach them. See, that's so-called, people call themselves Jews. They were locked up in Europe. I'm not going into all the details about that. They were locked up in Europe for 2,000 years. He went and brought them out, right? Because see, they wasn't using the energy wisely for that 2,000 years. They were using it foolishly, so they didn't have any power. Because power is using your energy wisely, focusing it. That's power. Use it foolishly, you just waste it. So you have a party, you have fun, you fornicating, all that kind of stuff. So you don't have any power. Power is the difference between water going through a hose and you got the power coming out of it, just pouring it, right? So he went up and taught them the Torah, and the Torah was to teach them how to use it wisely, so they would have achieved power. So it'd be power. See? So that's how they attained power, and they maintained that power more or less, right, over the next 2,000 years, even though they kept slipping and kept being overtaken by other empires, the Babylonian Empire, the Syrian Empire, so forth, so on, and finally the Roman Empire. See, after 2,000 years, then it was totally overcome because they wasn't applying the principles of the Torah. Because those are the principles that teach you how to turn that excess energy, that external energy, into power to rule. Because you need power to rule. So they kept falling and slipping until eventually they lost all power altogether when at the time the Romans overcame them. Okay? Roman Empire. Okay. So that's at that point, that's when Prophet Jesus, called Isa ibn Miriam, appeared with the New Testament, so-called Gospels. See? And that gave them to the Europeans, and so they would use that power to rule. See? In other words, that was teach them how to use that energy to turn it into power, so they could rule. That's what happened 2,000 years ago. See? And so they was highly influenced by the Roman Empire, so it was a clash between those who was following the teachings that Jesus gave them, the gospel, and the Roman Empire. And they did not overcome the Roman Empire, but they got control of it, but they were still overcome it. It means they didn't get rid of it totally, because a lot of Roman Empire is still built into what they mixed it. In other words, they mixed the Roman ideas and everything into what Jesus gave them. They call that Catholicism. See, and so the Roman, like I said, you can't beat them, join them. So the Romans did, right? What they did is they just took and just joined in. I think it was Constantine. They joined in right? Because they still had power. See, so it was a conflict between the two. They joined in with those who called themselves, they weren't called Christians at the time. They were followers of Jesus. That's what they claimed themselves to be. So they just changed the Pope, the emperor's name to Pope. They still had the same, pretty much the same system, same holidays, Easter and all those different things, right? The months, Augustus, Julius, Janus, and so forth, so on. So it pretty much was pretty much the same. This under the cloak of the gospel. In other words, it was like they were singing the song of the gospels, but it was actually, the lyrics was Roman culture. So the Pope ruled, then he had his like so-called Senate, that was the monks, then he had the priests, so forth. See? And the people had no access to the Bible because they didn't let the people, only person that could interpret the Bible was the Pope. He was the emperor. Anyway, they lost power after 500 years. So that was the rise of the Islamic power. This is chapter 20 of AL-INJIL, of the Revelations. That's what that's talking about there. So they had lost power. See? So that gave the Arabs, right, an edge. See, because they had some external energy, not as much as the Europeans, but since Europeans wasn't using it, then they had no power. They had the energy, they just wasn't using it. See, for power. It wasn't transferred into power because they was worshiping idols and all that kind of stuff. So that's the Roman Empire. They was worshiping idols. None of that stuff is in the Bible. They was worshiping idols and all that kind of stuff. Worshiping the Pope. So that gave the Arabs the edge. See, even though they had little energy, right? They did have some external energy. So the Quran showed them how to turn that energy into power. But they were warned about Gog and Magog, said, man, Gog and Magog would be let loose, and they wouldn't be able to stop them. So, they was able to maintain power for 1,000 years, and they was able to, enough power to keep the Europeans who had no power locked up in the abyss for 1,000 years. Chained up in the abyss for 1,000 years. That's what it's all about there. See, the Europeans and the Jews. Jews are Europeans also. But you got different groups of the Europeans. See, the Jews were the Europeans that came out that followed Moses. Okay? So so-called Catholicism, the Catholics was the ones that claimed to have be following Jesus. So they're all Europeans. Like the Quran says, they're all one nation. Okay? So, that's what chapter 20 is all about. So they was locked up. And the rise of the Islamic power and the Quran would teach them how to turn their energy into excess energy, external energy into power, which they did, and was able to lock them up for 1,000 years, to maintain power for 1,000 years. That's what that's all about. See? That's chapter 20. And it says that after that 1,000 years, right, they would break out. Gog and Magog would break out, and they would cover the whole earth, and they would rule, and they would control everyone up until the end for a season, for about 500 years. That's a season. You understand the end of Genesis, 500 years is a season, and then right they would encompass the holy city. In other words, the people that had locked them up for 1,000 years, and they would bring fire out of heaven upon their heads in sight of men. That's these hellfire missiles coming out from the drones that's dark in the skies of the Middle East. And then Gog and Magog will come to the end. Okay, so I want to make you understand that. See, so that's part one. See, understand what power is, and who had it, and how they had it. See, so it ends. Part one ends with Islamic power, right? Because they've risen for 1,000 years. They have control, but they start fading after 1,000 years. We're going to talk about that in the next segment, because they didn't stay faithful to the Quran and the teachings of Prophet Muhammad and stay faithful to it. See, they're what you call the jinn. So we're going to talk about that in part 2. Okay. Let's see here. Hold on for a second, brothers and sisters. Part 2, Abomination of Desolation. In part 2, brothers and sisters, we talked about some history in part 1. Okay, in part 2, we're going to talk about Gog and Magog, their escape from the bottomless pit or the abyss in their translation. So what happened within that 500 years? It said, for 500 years, right, they maintained control, right? This is from the time of Prophet Jesus, Isa ibn Miriam, or Isa ibn Yusuf, depending on your perspective. So, that was under control of the Pope. That was called Catholics. They didn't call themselves Christians, they called themselves Catholics. But they had lost control, right, because they weren't following the dictates, so their power gradually disappeared. That gave rise to the Islamic Empire, following the dictates of the Quran, right, which gave them the power to rule for 1,000 years. So after that 500 years period, after the 1,000 year period, the Catholics, right? Remember, Europeans, they're all one group. You had those that followed Jesus, you had those that followed Moses, or claim to follow Moses, claim to follow Jesus, so forth, right? The Catholics are those who claim to follow Jesus, right? Okay. They decided to rebel against the Pope. There was one lead, they was led primarily by this person called Martin Luther, called a Protestant movement. That's where Protestant comes from, protesters. They protested the Pope. And they went back, they started printing the Bible. I think they called it, I forgot the name of it. Anyway, they started, because the Bible wasn't made public for the people to read. Most people couldn't read anyway, but the Bible wasn't public for people to read. So they took and started printing the Bible, and people started reading it. And so they rejected the Catholic Church, it's the Pope, there's idolatry, all those things, right? And started going back to what they thought was the instructions of the gospel of Jesus. And so that gave them, that means their power started returning again, because they started using the energy in the way that the Bible said, at least the way they thought it said, and then energy started returning back to them. I mean, their power, they had energy, but now the power started returning back to them, because that's why the lessons say Christianity is only 551 years old. People say, that can't be right, man. Christianity has been around 2,000 years. See, because they don't understand those lessons. Those lessons, they don't understand them. Most Farrakhan's demons, most Farrakhan, they could reject those lessons anyway, because they don't understand them. Those lessons are powerful. Anyway. So they returned, they called themselves returning back to the teachings of Jesus. And so that meant that their energy would start turning back into power. They gave them the power over the Islamic Empire, which was declining. They was losing their power. See? So that became the rise of the Christians. They called themselves Christians because they say they were really followers of Jesus. That's what they call it, Christians. Say, we're real followers of Jesus. They reject the Pope, Pope and all the idolatry and everything else. Okay? So that was the rise. That was called Gog and Magog. That movement primarily started out of Britain. See, Britain is what the Bible calls Adam, right? Because Britain is not the Britain is not Europe. Britain is islands off the coast of Europe. But the British the people of Britain are refugees and exiles and criminals and everything out of Europe. That's why it says Adam was made from the dust of earth, from the dust of Europe. The people didn't want, because Europe represents the earth in the Genesis. Okay. So that was Adam. That's the Adam. This is the Adam that they're talking about in the Quran. When it says, I'm going to place a rule in the earth. There's many iterations of Adam. This is the final one. This God can make up. The one I talked about before, right? That was one of the previous, right? The first Adam was the one that produced by Dr. Yaqub and his people, right? See? The second Adam was the one that came out of the so-called Jews that came out of the cave, first ones to come out of the caves following Moses. That was the second Adam. See, this is the third Adam. This is the third and final Adam. This one here, the one that's calling themselves Christians. Okay. Okay. So they came out following. They gained power, right? And they gave power to rule everybody, because everyone else suffered from some level of energy deprivation. But they weren't, and they had it. And the gospel gave them, that's a sealed Bible, gave them the power, gave them the ability to change that energy they had into power. That gave them the power to rule, as long as they maintain, right, those instructions, follow that instruction manual. That's what the so-called gospel is, an instruction manual. That's what Torah is also, the Old Testament. See? So they said we follow New Testament because the Old Testament was for the Jews. That was for that time. The Old Testament for that time. See, they followed that, but the new ones is for the new time. Because you understand, the scriptures are for they're not all time, right? In other words, the Quran is only for a period of time. It's like you get guidance for summer and you get side guidance for winter. You get side guidance for fall. You can't use the guidance for summer and the fall. People don't understand that. Say, well, the Quran's for all time. No, it's not. What was the Quran that? What was it that Abraham had? What was it that Noah had? I mean, you understand they had different scripture because there was different times. So that's a mistake that people. Right. Anyway, we're not going to dwell on that. So they came out and they mixed that with mathematics, because if you understand study the gospel, all those mathematics they claim they came up with, it's all in there. Every action has an opposite or equal reaction. That's just reap what you sow. It's just a mathematical way of saying it. And Newton, the greatest pre-scientist, that's what he was deeply in the Bible. He was very religious. See? And that's where he got all his ideas from studying the Bible. Anyway, I'm not going to dwell on that either. So, they came out. Nothing could stop them. It says God and me, God, nothing could stop them. Because they had all this so-called disposable energy that now is focusing the power. And so, and the thing is that they said, now remember the Jews, they said they was a chosen people. See, they was a chosen people. But when Jesus came on the scene, he said, no, you're not the chosen people. He said, your father's the devil. He told the truth. He said, no, you're from Yaqub. See, you're from Yaqub. You're not the chosen people. And that's why they wanted to kill him. See, when he came on the scene 2,000 years ago, he said, no, you're liars. You're not the seed of Abraham, right? And you're not the seed of Abraham, right? See? And you're not the chosen people. You're chosen only to prove for this period of time, but you're not the chosen people of God. You're just chosen for this rule for this period of time. That's what he said. Because they said, the Abraham seed, they should have everything should belong to them. That's the sealed Bible. See, that's the Torah. And that was pretty much sealed by the book of Daniel. See? So you had to break the seal of Daniel to understand the Torah. See, the gospel is sealed by Revelations, which seals all of it. Okay, so what's happening here is that now what they're saying is is that this is a Catholic church now. What they said is that since Jesus made that statement, right, that means now the Europeans that was with the Bible, the New Testament, so-called New Testament, they were now the chosen people. They were the inheritance. They were the spiritual seed of Abraham. So all that applies to them. In other words, the covenant and all the inheritance and everything would go to them because they said it was taken away from the Jews and now transferred to them. See, I'm building this case up here. It was transferred to them. Okay. So now we got the seed of Abraham, the ones that claim to be the true seed of Abraham, the Jews, they're out of power. And now we got the ones who claim to be the spiritual seed of Abraham, right? Right? They were the Catholics, but then they lost power, right? And then the Islamic, and then what they made a claim. They said that they were the true seed of Abraham, which that's true. But they said that the inheritance didn't go to Isaac, which is us. It went to Ishmael. You see what I'm saying? So you got three claimants. First you got the Jews. They making the claim they're us. Then, right, you had remember that was the that was the Torah. That was the Old Testament, or Europeans called Jews, right? They was claiming it was us. And then coming along Jesus said, no, that's you lying. It's not you. And so then that means the Catholics that was following Jesus, claiming to follow Jesus, they said, no, that's us. We're the spiritual seed. So they're making a claim now. They said, we're going to get the inheritance. Remember, because they're going to inherit the whole earth and everything's going to be theirs. Because that's what Jews said before that, everything was theirs. Okay, so then they saying, no, it's us. Because we're the spiritual seed now. See? So they went forward with that. Until then, they was taken out, right, because they lost power by the Arabs. And then they made the claim, no, we are, they didn't say we weren't, they just said they are too. They said they had two sons, Ishmael and Isaac. But the inheritance that Abraham covenant went to Isaac. But they said, no, it's going to us, Ishmael. And we supposed to have everything. See, so they claim it, they're not claiming they're us, they claim it inheritance. They're claiming our inheritance. Follow me? Follow this path here. They declare, they say right now that they're Ishmael and that the inheritance goes in because Abraham had two sons, Ishmael and Isaac. Ishmael was his oldest son by his servant, but Isaac was his youngest son by his wife Sarah, and that's the one God blessed because he was his actual son by marriage, right? And so that's the one he blessed, and that's when we get inheritance. But no, that's not true. Because Ishmael's going to get it. He's the oldest son. And he's the son of father so far. See? So we got this fight over who the Abrahamic covenant applies to. Because they're the ones who are going to take over everything. See, we got this fight. We got the fight between the Jews. Then we had the so-called spiritual seed of Abraham, right? That's the Catholics. Right? And then you come with the Sunnis. Follow me so far? See? That was the case. So when God came out, right? They're saying they're the spiritual seed, so when they came to America, everything they did was right. Because America was the promised land. So when they wiped out the natives, that was okay, because they was just in God's way. Because they're the spiritual seed, right? Then we was just Seth, according to the Old Testament. They went to Old Testament, and we was doomed to be slaves the rest of our lives because we was Ham from Seth. Seth, the sins of Seth. Seth's descendants was cursed to be the slaves forever to Europeans. That's what they were saying. See, and it's interesting because Abraham's name was when the covenant was made, his name was Abram. See, and then his name was changed Abraham. See, most people don't catch that one. See, because he was separated from us and then united again. See, Abraham, because people be Ham. Okay. Just thought I'd put it out there to you. So this is the situation that was going on, right? all the way for almost 500 years. They was making that claim, so they wasn't doing anything wrong. They was following God's will, enslaving us, because we was Ham, we was supposed to be enslaved, wiping out the Native Americans. They was savages. They was occupying the promised land. They said America was a promised land, and so forth. That's God and Magog. Hope you understand that. See? So that's when they enslaved us about 5 years ago. They talk about Genesis says, let's make man out of action. No, they got that all wrong. They're not talking about them, they're talking about us. That's another story. Right? So we're talking about another time. But you understand we got 3 claimants now. We got the Jews claiming it. Right? They claiming they're us. Jesus, no, you're lying. Then we got Catholics, right? Catholic Europeans. They claiming that the covenant goes to them because they're the spiritual seed, right? And then after them came the Arabs, the Sunnis. They claiming, well, they're not claiming us, but they claiming that the Arabs really was the oldest son Ishmael, them. Right? So you got 3 claimants. And then when they fell, then you came with the Christians who took the claim of the Catholics that they're the spiritual seed of Abraham. And they was really following it because the Catholics weren't, they was really following. So you only got 3 claimants here. The 2 stages to the Europeans of Catholics and Christians, they claim, make the same claim, they're the spiritual seed of Abraham. They're the ones who took over everything. Okay? So we're gonna, I think that led up to us being, right, being enslaved here. Because that's where the Abrahamic covenant kicks in. At the time that we was taken into slavery, into bondage. We'd be prisoners, we'd be enslaved, we'd be transferred to a land that's not ours, be in captivity and persecuted. That's when that kicked in. Okay? Approximately 5 years ago. And God can make God escape out of Europe after 1,000 years in the pit. Been locked up by the Islamic Empire. Okay? Are you with me so far? Okay. So that covers that. So on to part 3. Assalamu alaikum. Okay, brothers and sisters, this is part 3. Abomination of Desolation. Part 3. Now we covered the first part where we talk about the Jews, the Torah, right? See? And they claim to be the true seed of Abraham. And then we went to 2, where we see that they lost power, and the Catholics claim that the Torah was revealed in the first part. That's they follow the Torah, and then the Gospel 2,000 years ago, called the Gospel New Testament, right? That was given to them by Jesus, and they was following that to some extent. That's so-called Catholics, right? And then they claim, right, to be the spiritual seed of Abraham, because Jesus said that the Jews were not the seed of Abraham. They were the fathers of the devil. So they claim to be the spiritual seed. So it's transferred. So now you got 2 claimants. The Jews claiming to be the true seed, then the Catholics, right, claiming to be the spiritual seed, right? Then they lost power because they didn't, just like the Jews, they didn't follow their guidance, the Torah, they didn't follow it faithfully. They lost power. And then the Catholics, they lost power because they didn't follow it faithfully, right? The gospel that was doing approaching the Pope and idols and things like that. And then because of the Islamic Empire, right? Now, they was making a claim to inheritance. They wasn't claiming to be the seed of Abraham. They claimed they were claiming to be seed of Abraham, but that's a valid claim because they are the seed of Abraham. But they wasn't claiming to be Isaac. They was claiming to be Isaac, but Isaac who was the inheritors. Isaac is an inheritor. See, the covenant doesn't go to all the seed of Abraham, only goes to Isaac, that part of the seed of Abraham. So we have the Jews claim to be Isaac. We have the Catholics claim to be the spiritual Isaac, right? But the Arabs, they know we're not Isaac, we're Ishmael, but the inheritance goes to us because we're oldest son. So we got 3 claimants to it. Because that's what it's all about. Brothers and sisters, all the scripture and everything is about that covenant. What you don't know anything about, it's not teaching you about it. The whole scripture and everything is based on that covenant. It's all based on that. All of it. Why are you not teaching that? And why when Farrakhan talks about it, he don't talk about the first part of it. The whole covenant, he talks about the part of our suffering. He doesn't talk about the part of reward. And he said, well, we're going to go out, right? He's talking about that means that we're going to go out, we're going to come out of here by. We're not going to sin, all that kind of stuff anymore. You better read about Sodom and Gomorrah. He said, get out of town. Don't just stop sinning. Because when they invade and America's burned down, says, oh, it's going to be burnt and everything, you're going to still be here. You're talking about, well, I'm going to be okay because I'm not sinning. Or when meteors hit this place and bomb and everything else, it's going to just not explode on you. If you believe that, you have to get out of here. We're going home, brothers and sisters. See, Farrakhan says you're not going anywhere because he's a liar. He's working for them. You'll see as we go along. So now we're up to coming to the end, right? Where we got the three claims to the inheritance. We got Jews claiming that they're because they're Isaac. We got the Catholics claiming because they're saying they're the spiritual Isaac. Then we got the Arabs claiming because they're saying their oldest son Ishmael. They should have inheritance. Right? So at that time we're enslaved here, right? Because at that time, after it says the rise of Gog and Magog, right? They enslaved us. That's when Abraham covenant kicks in. At the point that Abraham covenant kicks in, it doesn't kick in until we are enslaved. And that was about 500 years ago when Gog and Magog got let loose out of the bottomless pit. So now we're enslaved. Now Abraham covenant kicks in. It doesn't kick into them, right? So we have to take to a foreign land, enslaved, sojourn would be sojourners. That means temporary. Read the word sojourn, it means temporary. So now we're here, right? And we're doing the 400 years. And God said He would come Himself. So now that's where we're on part 3. In part 3, the event of Farad, Muhammad. He's the God. He came. See, He came to let us know that He can't fulfill the covenant. The time, the 40 years is not completed yet. He let us know, right, that, hey, He's here, and it's going to be fulfilled. Right? See, we still had about 40 more years left on it. There's going to be no more 40 more years. We had, about 100 years left on it. I'm not sure. I haven't done the calculation right now. Anyway, we still have time doing it. But what I meant was, actually, I kind of misspoke. We had about 40 years left on the energy deprivation part of it. See, because for the rest of the part of it, we'll be suffering in self-imposed energy deprivation. That's the enemy deceiving us to stop us from gaining power. See, that's self-imposed energy deprivation. If you have the energy now to have power, you just need using it. You don't have the guidance. So that's Muhammad appeared about 100 years ago, and in the 20s, in the 1920s, right? He announced, he raised Elijah Muhammad. Elijah Muhammad announced that we are the true seed of Abraham. Now here we come, almost full circle here. He announced we are the true seed of Abraham. Now we have another claimant. We had 2 claimants already. We had the Jews, we had the Catholics, right? And then the Christians after them were the same people, right? The Christians after them. So they make the same claims. And then we had the Arabs, right? So they were all claimants, see? But none of them had a real claim, because we had the real claim, because like Muhammad said, here's the proof. See? We're here 400 years. Just like I said. And no one else had done that. And there's your other reasons. So here's the proof that we were the true seed of Abraham. Now we got another claimant. But we got the real deal. We got the proof. We got the contract, the written contract. See? And it's both in sealed and unsealed Bible. See? And it's both. It's in the old, so-called Old Testament and the New Testament, so they can't say as abrogated. Then you got a problem. Because there, you go to court, you got a legitimate claim. I mean, you got 30 miles out, right? So they got to find a way to forge a claim. Forge a claim. Come with a forgery to counter it. A good forgery has to be a very good forgery. So that's the problem. Because at that period of time, right, the other claimants were fighting against each other. The Jews fighting against the Christians and the Catholics and the Arabs. They're all fighting each other. Why? Why do they fight? Because they're all fighting that claim. They don't tell you that. They're all fighting over that claim. That's what they're fighting about. Because all of them have claims to that land. The Jews say, Arabia belongs to us. See? The Catholics say, the whole world belongs to us. Jerusalem belongs to us. And now you got the Christians saying the same thing. See? So everybody's fighting over who's the inheritors. Everybody's fighting with each other. That's all fighting each other, but that's why all these are fighting. These are primarily fighting. They got problems with the Chinese and everybody, but they are specifically fighting against each other. They've been fighting against each other 1,000 years because they're fighting over that. And then you got someone come along and say, "I got the real deal. I got the real covenant." And then they all turn around and say, "Uh-oh." See? They turn around and say, "Uh-oh. What's going on?" You see, he got the real deal. See, so we don't have to prove it. So we got to do something about that. So what happens? See, they decide to create a forgery, the best forgery they have. Because at that time, remember, they was fighting with each other. And that particular time in when Elijah Muhammad said that, they was at World War II. Right? They was everybody was fighting. The Arabs fighting. They was all fighting each other, and they was about to wipe out the Jews. They was about to get rid of that. Those claimants. What was they fighting over? They was getting ready to get rid of that claimant because the Catholics over in Germany, they wanted to get rid of that claimant. See, they were going to eradicate that claimant. That's what that was all about. So they were going to get rid of them. So they all fighting each other. They about to eradicate each other over this deal. They ain't telling you that that's what it's all about. But if you understand history, you know that's what it's all about. So therefore, you're trying to eradicate them. And then when Elijah Muhammad made that claim, they looked around and they said, "Oh, hell it." They started working together because we had a valid claim. And they had to get rid of the claimant, the valid claimant, before they could, substantiate their claim. See, they was all working together on this thing. You may not realize it. They was all working together on this thing. So they came up, the Jews, they nearly eradicated them because they called it the final solution. Why call it the final solution? Because they want to get rid of them. Get rid of that claimant. Then it's all the people that was burned up and hated for 1,000 years, all of a sudden, they started loving them. The ass became honey pots, and everybody was eating honey. Overnight. Because they said, we're going to say the dead are true to Abraham. See? Because we can't have Elijah talking about that these black folks, they got the real claim. We can't have that. So we got to find something that we got to prove that that's wrong. We got to have a counter. And that's what they did. So they all stopped killing the Jews, started loving them, and then, because remember, the whole process is that they have to validate their claim. And the whole idea is that, let's see something here. Hold on, brothers and sisters. One thing here, I'm getting hold on. I'm not sure if this paused or what it just did just now. Okay. Anyway, as I was saying, I think it paused. I'm not sure. We may have missed something there. I'll see in a minute. Anyway, they had to come up with they couldn't have Elijah Muhammad with that narrative. They had to counter the narrative. Because with the true seed of Abraham, That blows everything away, because that shows that the Arabs are fake, right? They false, right? That shows that the Catholics are fake, they false. It shows the Christians are fake, they false. And what, or more than that, it shows that the Christians and the Catholics, right, they're actually devils, because that means this wasn't the whole promised land. They took this land, they eradicated these people. And that means they didn't enslave people that was Ham. What they did is they enslaved God's chosen people. That means they're devils. That means they're going to be destroyed, because that's according to the covenant. Those people that did that to us are going to pay a price for it. That's including the Arabs, because the Arabs, all of a sudden, right, they're wicked, because now they're the people that sold, because we Joseph, if we're the true seed of Abraham, we Isaac, that means we're Joseph. That means they sold us into slavery. They're the ones that sold us in slavery. You see? They're all guilty. Their hands are covered with blood, what they did to us. See, they can't admit it. They sold us into slavery. They are brothers who, because they are brothers, they sold us into slavery. Arabs are brothers, they sold us into slavery. They betrayed us. So if we're the true seed of Abraham, that means that's who they are. They betrayed us into slavery, into Egypt. And then the Egyptians, they're wicked. They've been oppressing us and everything. And it says what will happen to them at the end. That was the problem. So they set false Israel. All of them together. The Arabs had a part in that. Because they still say, oh yeah, well they Jews. See, they don't say that. The Shia says it, but the Arabs don't say it. They don't say it. See, they say, well, they oppressing the Palestinians. But they won't come and say, because they won't, because they're in cahoots with them. Because they know who we are too. That's why they're paying Farrakhan to stop us from talking that talk about the seed of Abraham. That's why they killed Martin Luther King when he's talking about the promised land. They told him don't say it. Overnight, he was dead the next day. You understand these things, brothers and sisters. That's what that's all about. That's what it's all about. See? So they said false Israel in 1948. And the whole idea is they have to return, right? If they had to return. So that's why they set them up over there. And it says once they set up over there, they will not be taken down, because that's the whole idea. Once you return according to Abraham's covenant, you'll be there forever. You'll rule forever. Nobody can take you down. God will protect you forever. See, that's the whole idea. So they had to prove that they true Abraham by taking our Palestinians' land, putting them over there, and then putting all their resources. That's what 666 is all about, right? See. Because there's three of them there. That's America, that's God, America, Britain, and false Israel. And it's everything, and anybody doesn't obey or commit to Israel's so-called false Israel righteousness, they can't buy selling. That's sanctions. America's the only country, followed by Britain, is the only country on the planet that does that. If you don't obey them, if you don't support false Israel, you can't buy or sell anything. They sanction you. It's clear. All this BS about some special mark. This BS. That's what that's all about. Okay, so we're going. So and then it says they'll say false Israel, but they gave you a sign. It says when the Suleiman be born, right? To be conceived, or Jesus conceived, right? It says a star would rise in the east. That means he will be conceived in the west. That'd be a sign, right? So false Israel is a sign. That's that star. So David, when they rose, that's the same time Suleiman or Christ will be conceived in the west. So if you want to find who Suleiman is, or the son of man, Solomon, or Christ, then you got to go look at birth tables and find out who was conceived around 1948, March 1948. Then you eliminate the population to them. And then you figure out who amongst those is the real one. That's definitely in Farrakhan. Okay, brothers and sisters. On to part 4. Part 5, Abomination of Desolation. This is a redux from the previous one, because of sound issues, so hopefully this will make up for that. Part 5. Okay, now we get to the meat of which is all about desolation itself, the abomination of desolation. So for the last 40-some years, right, after since 48, right, specifically since 75, right, they've been hard at work See, they had to move Elijah Muhammad out the way, and they got Farrakhan, and his whole job was, that's why it says, he who was talking about the son of perdition, who has been restraining, had to be moved out of the way. Elijah Muhammad was restraining them. Once he was moved, then the son of, then would be the falling away, because he wasn't lying. He was beheaded. That's John, right? So it fell away, and then it says son of perdition would be manifest. And that's Farrakhan. So his whole life job is to get us to make sure we don't think about that covenant, or forget about it. See, we ain't going nowhere. See, when he talks about it every now and then, but he talks about it in the sense of, yeah, we went through this 1 year, but that's it. We don't talk about the rest of it. He actually says, we're not going nowhere. We ain't going to split the Atlantic Ocean. We like it here. The country belongs to us. We work for it. It belongs to us. That's not the Abrahamic covenant. He sure is not the measure of the covenant that would surely come to, that would suddenly come to Elijah's temple, because he will be preaching the Abrahamic covenant. He doesn't. Change it. And he doesn't. He doesn't preach it. See, that's what he's been doing for the last 40-some years. But then Suleiman, who came, right, to Christ, counted by the Antichrist in 48, right? He, right, would be the messenger of the covenant that would suddenly come to Elijah's temple, because he had to take and be baptized by Elijah, initiate the Islam by Elijah, the 5 fundamental pillars of Islam, to give him the power to break those 7 seals in 1990. All the while, false Israel's power is fading, America's power is fading, the Sunni's power is failing, all the power is failing. More conflict in the world, and the enemies are growing. Because listen, 1948, China began to rise. See, why are they rising? Because the powers of the West are no longer able to keep them down. You understand what's going on, brothers and sisters? It's mathematics. See, they had the power to keep. The power to keep someone down. See. They have the power to keep us down, but our power started breaking in 1948 too. See? Because then you have so-called civil rights movement and so forth and so on. So their power to keep us down started because they losing their power. So now when they use, in other words, if you don't have the power to keep them down, then they start rising. So all the enemies start rising in 1948, right? Because their power started waning in 1948. So now you've got all these countries rising now. The original people in America is rising. The enemies are rising, India and China. You understand, brothers and sisters? So they're rising. Now, 1990, right? That's when Gog and Magog make their move. Because they saw that Islam was rising too fast, or not that Islam was rising too fast, but they made their move because they made their move to go over there and enhance false Israel's credibility by knocking. See, they're still fighting against each other again, the Arabs. See, because they had a little spell there, but now they're fighting against each other. So now they're all against each other again. So now they wanted to take down the Arabs to the benefit of false Israel, because they got to enhance that claim. See, they still got to make that claim legitimate. That's what that's all about. And that's that time that Suleiman starts breaking the seals. He got the power now to break those seals, start breaking those seals in 1990. That's when the angels start, and these things start happening. See? Because the release, because now his power starts extending, right? And now he's starting to empower his people. See? Now you may think they're not listening, not paying attention. You may think that. But it's affecting them. See? It's affecting them. See? So we're not going to go into that kind of details here. Anyway, that's what's happened. And it says, he will continue breaking those seals, because all these things are happening according to what the angel says. So they happen because it just happened, or they happen because his power is extending, because from the angel is the expression of his power, right? So in other words, his power increasing. That means the more power he has over the angel, right? So that giving the energy to our people. And it's also affecting. It's like throwing ripples in a lake. You throw a rock and you got ripples, right? So it's changing the world. The energy the energy is affected, because this energy. Remember, the angel is the most powerful scripture on the planet right now. So it shows you how to control your energy to the max, right? So therefore, that's power. So this power is starting to change the world. It's extended because we have power now. So Suleiman's the first one to be able to take that, use that, because Farrakhan had taken people and diffused their power. Elijah Muhammad gave him power. He gave the Levites power, and Farrakhan took it away from him. Well, Scientology and all this other stuff. See, worshiping America and all this stuff. So Suleiman, right, he takes the power to break the angel, and then he starts spinning his power, and it's very focused, so it's very powerful. In other words, you have different degrees of power, right? Like different degrees of heat. Still fire, but some is 10 degrees, some 100 degrees, some 50 degrees, 1,000 degrees. See? So it's very intense power. So it's affecting the world, it's changing the world. That's what the angel is doing, it's changing the world. See? So the world's starting to look more and more like what the angel's saying. And that's what's happening right now. See? That's what's happening. So now they got to counter that. So they're preparing for our destruction, but I'm not going there right now. I want to get to this desolation situation. False Israel losing power. America losing power. God, the main God, losing power. The enemies are rising. China's rising. India's rising. See? Because they don't have the power to keep them down anymore. They don't have the power to keep them down anymore. Okay, now, remember, false Israel, this whole thing is about that Abrahamic covenant, and they're pretending to be us. So, if they're taken out, that means they can't be us. If they're taken out, that means the true seed Abraham steps forward as us. That means we're the true seed. There's no doubt about it. That means everything I told you is made manifest. Arabs are made manifest as being the ones that betrayed us. They're sitting on land that doesn't belong to them. The Europeans are showed that they're the devils who Elijah Muhammad said they were. They've been oppressing us and everything. Right? They committed genocide. They've been destroying the whole planet. This wasn't no paradise. This wasn't a promised land. You know, say all this exposed. They can't have that. They can't have that. See? So right now, part of the reason why they're pushing on the Middle East right now, because they want to secure the fact that they just choose Abraham because they're losing power. So they want to eliminate any contestant out there, and false Israel will have nobody can take them down. Because right now, false Israel are under threat. Under threat from who? From Michael. Michael's angels, Shia. They're under threat. They can be taken out. See, because they're losing power over there. So that's what's going on right there, right now. See, this is when they're going to get nuclear power. Israel already, false Israel already has nuclear power. They're the ones that stabilize the Middle East. That's another story. But the bottom line is that the whole idea, what you have to understand is they cannot be taken out. That's the whole idea. If they're the truth Abraham, they cannot be taken out. If they're taken out, that means they're not. And they can't let that happen. If that happens, the whole world changes dramatically, because the whole world is built on that pillar. If you snatch the pillar out, if you snatch the foundation out, the whole house falls. This whole house is built on that idea that the truth of Abraham, they cannot be moved. And if that happens, which is impossible, because God said that once they return, they will not be removed, then that's bring the whole house down. You need to understand that, brothers and sisters. And that's what's about to happen. That's why you see the abomination. It's the abomination. Because why is the abomination? Because they're claiming to be somebody they're not. That's the abomination. That's a lie. That's what abomination is. It's something that's sick. Right? It's like manure. I mean, abomination. It's like, oh. They're making it clean. They're not. It's like you're saying, you know, she's a honey. That's an abomination. Can't even a lot. It might look similar from a distance, but they ain't the same. They're an abomination. It's the opposite. It's Satan. And they claim to be us. It's the abomination of desolation, a place where it should not be. I mean, they shouldn't be there. Stand in a place they shouldn't. That means they shouldn't be there. And they don't know. You don't know the abomination of desolation. The abomination of desolation is because they don't tell you. They make sure you don't know about it. Most don't even know what the Abraham covenant is. Most know where it is. Because God ain't telling you about it. When they do tell you the truth about it just a little bit. They don't want you to know these things. When you see the abomination of desolation, a place stand in a place that should not be. So that's them. See, then your redemption draws nigh. That means it's time for you to go home. When you see the abomination of desolation, see, because there's going to be a desolation like you've never seen before. They're about to go to war, imminent. It's going to be in a few days. And when they go to war, everybody's expectation is that false Israel are going to win. Because remember, once that war takes place, they call it the war of Gog and Magog. Once it takes place, that means what that means. When it takes place, that means all the nations are going to gather against Israel, so far false Israel. Right? And then that's when Jesus is going to return to save them and destroy all the enemies, and then he's going to set up his kingdom. That's what they're expecting. And they happy, yeah, man. They can't wait. They can't wait because that means Jesus is about to return. They can't wait. That's what you have to understand. That's what's going on right now. They can't wait. Yeah, let's get them. Let's knock out them the Shia. See, let's knock out them Arabs. See, that's what you can't understand. But if you look at it carefully, a lot of stuff don't make any sense of it, does it? Because how come the Arabs are lined up with false Israel? Why? See. Anyway, that's what's supposed to happen. But that's not what happens. Because I'm telling you, they're false Israel, and they're going to be taken out. That's the story in chapter 12. Michael's angels go to work with Rag and his angels, and I'm going to full explanation of that, right? But when they're taken out, see, that's the abomination of desolation. When they're taken out, when something not supposed to happen, impossible, that means it proves that they're not the true seed of Abraham, and that proves that we are, and they're going to make that calculation in an instant. They're going to make that calculation. That's why I tell you, when you see it, flee. Flee. Because your next door neighbor, your white next door neighbor, is going to kill you. Because they're going to make that calculation in a second. That you see Abraham, and that's all about them, and all the destruction coming down on them because of you. And then if you escape, you're going to get revenge on them, and they know what they did to you. What do you think you would do? They're going to make that calculation in a second. It's going to be all over the news. Because all the churches, everybody's telling me, false Israel's going to win. And Jesus coming back. And that's everybody believing that. And they rejoicing. And it's not going to happen that way. It's going to happen the other way. When it happens, they're going to make that calculation in a split second. That you, the true seed of Abraham, and that they really the devils, and God's coming to destroy them. And if He come to destroy them, right, to get you, then why not take you out? They're going to make your next door neighbor, your white wife, your white husband, or whatever, they're going to cut your throat. And that's why I tell you, leave immediately, straight. And that's why I tell you, only people that take that warning are those who are not paying attention. That's why we get that information too. Because first of all, you have to know that. You have to even know about that. You have to know what to look for. Because if you don't know, you're dead already. Because you ain't going to Google it. You're dead already. If you wake up, sleep, you're dead already. So the wise ones, they already made preparation. They're gone. See? The other ones, they paying attention. Right? They fueled up and everything else. They watch and they nervous. But at least they're looking. See? So once they see the war, false Israel taken down, they're gone. Then you got others that still waiting around because once the war is lost over here, American and British kick out, they know when to protect false Israel anymore. And they're under siege. See, at that point, that's when they say, that's the point. That's the last point you got. First, you got the point when the war starts. Right? Gone. When America and Britain's kicked out, I'm gone. See? Then they're under siege. Those are the ones that have to flee. Because how long does that siege last? A day? A week? Whatever? Because when you see it, because everybody's in expectation, because at that time, at that darkest hour, well, maybe Jesus is going to come back. They still hoping Jesus come back. That's going to happen. See? And, see? Because somebody will wait then. But then if you wait until the axe go down, if you make it out, you'd be lucky. Because they can make it out. Because you still got a chance. Or they're under siege. Let me get the hell out of here. You understand? But once they actually go down, that cop will make a second. And it'd be too late. Maybe somebody might make it. See? That's what it's telling you, brothers and sisters. There it is. You don't have to believe it. Just know about it. So therefore, because you know about it, you got a chance. Because then when you see it happen, then you stop saying, okay, because I already told you about this before it happened. How can I tell you about it? No one else. You have to know about it. That's my job, to make you know about it. Because we're not trying to condemn you. We ain't worrying about your sinning, your eating pork, all that stuff. We know you ain't supposed to be doing that. Right? Because you over here, we all cover this shit over here. Once we get you home, there won't be no pork to eat. There won't be no drugs to take. There won't be none of that crap anymore. And you're not shitting in you. You're righteous people. You've just been thrown into a sewer. Right? So you cover your shit. So we got a shout for you. See, it ain't like these pigs, they are shit. Hope you understand, boss, the abomination of desolation is going to take place any day now. So our purpose, and those who claim, right, to be assisting, their whole objective is day and night, 24/7, to tell you about the abomination of desolation. Because every time one of you hear it, it's going to save your life. Because you may not believe it, but the point is, you at least know about it. Because if you don't know about it, you're dead. Hope you understand, brothers and sisters. So we're going to leave it there. Watch out for these demons. Remember, half of the demons in this country, blacks, are demons. All the ones you see on TV and all that kind of stuff, they're all demons. They're mass. Farrakhan's the chief demon. He's going to do everything he can in the next few days to dispel, because he listens to this stuff. He listens to me. You might not think he does. He does. See, the dispel, that's his job. Because he's a demon. He wants you to stay here. Hope you understand, brothers and sisters. When that war takes place, if you're wise, right, get out of town. All black folks won't come to one place. They'll all come to one place in the center of the country. See? But just don't sit and wait. It says when it happens, you can't go back and get your clothes, you can't go back and get your baby, you can't do anything. That's that, because they're not talking about the army or the military or the police coming in, because you got time, they're on the way. They're talking about your next door neighbor. That's why they flee. The only reason why you flee, because you wait till the last minute. Because you wait till you actually saw it. Hope you're wise in that, brothers and sisters. Be gassed up and ready. Have your stuff all packed, no way you ain't got time. Anybody sitting around there got something else to buy, I'm out here. Hope you understand, brothers and sisters. Assalamu alaikum. Part 4, Abomination of Desolation. Now that false Israel was set up, 1948, everybody's in love with them, they're worshiping them now, right? You have the Christians, they're in power. They claim to be following Jesus, so-called Gospels. But when they turn and start worshiping false Israel, 1948, their power starts declining. See? Their power starts declining at that point. That's the time of the Christ. That's why I call false Israel the Antichrist, because they came into existence at the same time. That's I'm not going to the mathematics of that, right? But they balance each other. But the Christ grows in power as they diminish in power. See? So we find all three are diminishing in power. See? Because the Arabs, they were already diminishing in power, but they're even declining, even quickens, because they are indirectly worshiping false Israel. See, because they're behind the scenes, right? They're supporting false Israel. Because you think about it, do you know how many Arab countries and how powerful Arab countries were? Even Turkey, a non-Arab country, Sunnism was in the Middle East at the time they set up false Israel. Excuse me, brothers and sisters. At the time they set up false Israel. Very powerful. All those countries. And they had less than 1 million Jews over there, and they couldn't whip them. They didn't have any army or anything. And so-called, they was able to defeat all the Arab countries and the non-Arab countries. No. They had to put on a show of force for the common. See, because they don't want the common Arabs to know the truth of what was going on. Because they've been telling them, you cannot make friends with Jews. You cannot make friends with them. Because it says in the Quran, you cannot make friends with the Jews and the Christians. See? They claim they're fighting against them, and then all of a sudden, they're going to allow false Israel to set up and take Palestine from other Arabs. The man in the street wasn't, the man and woman in the street wasn't going wrong with that one. So they had to pretend that they was fighting against them. See? So they said, well, see, that proves that to see this because, look, I mean, it was only like 1 million of them. They defeat 10 million, 10 times their number. They could have wiped them out anytime they wanted to. They didn't, because they was going along with this scam, because they're all in it together. See? But they didn't want to be openly, because right now, look at it, right, what are they doing right now? They said, do not make friends with Jews and Christians. Aren't they doing that very thing right now? So-called Abrahamic, what do they call it, whatever, I forgot what they call it. Oh, Abrahamic Accord. Right? And they make a peace with false Israel. See? So they was on in on it. The leaders. See? The priests, the imam, they was all in on it. So they had to show a force to pretend to the normal people that they couldn't defeat them. But they could defeat them anytime they wanted to. See? That was all about. See? So then they had to go on a campaign, right? See? A deception. Of maximum deception. See? Because Elijah Muhammad put that narrative out there. Now they got false Israel sitting there. And America has spent tremendous amounts of money. See? Tremendous amounts of energy. Tremendous amount of clout, politically, economically, militarily, to keep them going. Because the whole idea is they cannot be uprooted once they sit. They cannot be defeated once they're here. Because that's the whole idea. So they made a deal with the Arabs and everything. You can't defeat them. You have to let them be there. Because that's the whole idea. Because they true seed Abraham. Because if they uprooted, that means they're not. Because that's the whole covenant. They first have to return. They didn't do the founding. They walked around 400 years. They haven't done 400 years anywhere. They even said themselves, I told Jesus, we never been as bond as anybody. See? So they admitted themselves. So they're not, forget about that part. See? In other words, their part of the agreement they had to do 400 years someplace, they didn't do it anyway. Anyway, so they said, well, yeah, but we returning, so that's the part they pick up from. We returning, and we'll never be uprooted. and we're going to return to the promised land. But see, the Arabs wasn't going along with it. They weren't going to give them the Arabia. So they threw them over to the Palestinians. See, remember, they part of it. They want to hold on to that land. See? But these people but they don't understand these are people that claim they're Jews. See, because they really try to, they're not playing. They saying, that's our claim, that's our claim. And they pissed off at everybody else because everybody been trying to kill them for the last 2,000 years. See? So they taking this very serious. And their whole idea is to take over the whole Middle East. Because if they choose Abraham, that's what they have to do to prove it. See? So that puts the Arabs in a quandary and a dilemma, because they got to keep saying, yeah, they're the true seed, right? And keep them there. But they know that their whole purpose is to take over their land too. See, it's a proverbial rock in a hard place. It's all confusing. This whole world is in total confusion over the Abrahamic covenant. See? And America, who hates the Jews anyway, they want to keep them up there because we can't. They can't let it, and they can't let out that we the true seed of Abraham, because that means that they're wicked, evil devils who've been oppressing us. You see the problem everybody's got. And for us, Israel, if they, they prove they have to take all the land over there. See? All they got is a little Palestinian, little place that's small in New Jersey right now. They're supposed to have the whole thing. Because if they lose it, they lose everything, because their whole claim, even existence, is that they're true Abraham. If they don't have that, they have nothing. Then everybody, because then the Arabs and the Catholics and the Christians turn back on them again and just get rid of them. Because they know they're only there for their, you understand? Because to serve the Arab interest and the Christian interest. See, they only has a forgery. They know they only has a forgery, right? For the Arabs and for the Christians and for the Catholics. They know that. So everybody, it's all a big mess. That's why nobody can understand it, because they're not explained to it like I am. So then the work has to go on us, because they got to stop us from making that claim. They don't want the Superior Court with that claim. Because even though they got a good counterfeit, it's still, they will not stand up to excruciating scrutiny. So that's the demons. You pull the demons out. The chief demon, because that has somebody to stop the whole, even the mention of it. See, because the whole challenge came out of the seat of Elijah, who was sitting in the seat of Farad. So now they say that the son of Addition, he was sitting in Elijah's seat. And he would tell you, you ain't going nowhere. See, he's going to destroy the whole idea about it even going over there. See, he'll say, well, yeah, we'll just see it, because he can't come out and say directly, we ain't, because, that would Elijah Muhammad made that. That's the whole purpose of Elijah Muhammad being here. So you be very careful about that. But if you read what he says, he's saying that that's not us, because he's saying we ain't going anywhere, and that's the whole reason. That's the whole idea behind Abrahamic covenant. If he tells you not going anywhere, he's saying that Abrahamic covenant is not true, it's not real. That Elijah Muhammad, Master Muhammad, told us a lie. Because he don't read that part. He said, oh, we're not going nowhere. We're going to stay here. Well, then what's the point of our 400 years? What's the point of Abrahamic covenant when everybody's fighting over it? Why are we fighting? And that serves, whose purpose does that serve to say that? It serves the Arabs' purpose, because now we're not seeking to take their land. That's our land. We're not seeking to take our land back. That serves their purpose. That serves false Israel's purpose, because now, right, they can still go and pretend they false to Israel, they true seed of Abraham, and they're getting the benefits, because one of the benefits of being the seed of Abraham is that everybody's supposed to bless you. And people that bless you, Allah will bless, God will bless, and people that curse you, God will curse. So that means they get all this money and support and financial and everything else, aid for everybody, because they have that claim that they're the true seed of Abraham. That serves their purpose. serves America's purpose too. Right? Because, right, if we're not true slaves, then slavery wasn't a problem. Because that's in the Bible. It says that God says we're supposed to be slaves forever. We're Ham, the descendants of Shem, who were supposed to be slaves forever. So slavery wasn't an issue. It serves everybody's purpose that we're not the seed of Abraham, that we stay here and that we stop making that claim. Because see, we have a claim. We have a valid claim. Here we are, we're the body laying on the floor, and we're saying we're the ones that got slain, and we lay around and get them. Evidence, everything's right there. How they gonna say you laying down there on the floor in the house slain, and he's saying, I ain't slain him, you in this house on this floor? So they have to stop it. And that's the demons. And demons got all kinds of ways to make you stop thinking about, how we're gonna stay here, you can be like me, you can be Oprah, you can be rich, the American dream, you can do all these things, right? See? You can be a rock star, anything you want to be. They know you're never going to be. Not here. The only ones exceed, just like back in chain slavery, the only ones got to mass house was master's children. Those are the demons. They say the angel tells a half of the blacks in America are demons. That means there's devil's seed. That means there's the devils. That's why the Bible tells you to warn you. Watch out for sheep. Wolves in sheep clothing. They're still wolves, they just look like sheep. Those are demons, they're still devils, they just look like us. They still got the devil mindset. And they're successful in society because they think they love this world's life. They accept they love their father's built. They love what their father's built because they're their fathers. So they're successful in it. But now America's, because they worship a false Israel, which is idolatry, is a lie, and all the things they do, they're moving away from the gospel. Remember, when they first came in, they were like extremists, Puritans. They called them the Puritans. Why? Because they were so extreme to scripture. They're going to follow scripture letter by letter. Every letter, they're going to follow it. See, but now they're embracing homosexuality and transgenderism and this LGBT and all the stuff they're doing, and drugs and alcohol, right? And all else, and fornication, all the stuff they're doing. See? So they're not following. So they're not following the guys that gave them power. So now they're losing power. All the power's almost gone. See? They're losing power now. That's what's going on. And demons are losing it too. See? But that's the whole idea to keep us, right? Keep us from making that claim. That's the whole purpose. See? So we're going to go more into part 5. But you understand, that's the whole purpose. That's the demons. And Farrakhan is the chief demon. Because he's there to tell you, don't even make the claim at all. The other demons get you to distract you. But his whole idea is to make you not to make the claim at all. Stop making the claim. He's been paid by Arabia. He hasn't produced anything. He doesn't even say, claims call it Nation Islam, but it's not a nation, it's just an organization. What does they build? A nation builds things. What does the Nation Islam own? Nothing. They ain't building anything like I was building something. They're not building anything. It's just an organization, but they claim it's the Nation Islam. It's not a nation, it's an organization. Hope you understand, brothers and sisters. So now we're going to move on to the bottom line. We're going to move on to part 5. Assalamu alaikum.